Lydia stepped off the bus, her bag slung over one shoulder, and took a deep breath. The city smelled of rain and concrete, a mix of possibilities and challenges. She had moved hundreds of miles away from her small hometown with one purpose: to carve out a place for herself where no one would define her by the life she had left behind. The streets were bustling with people hurrying past, each absorbed in their own lives, yet none seemed to notice her. She liked that. Anonymity felt freeing. Her first week at the company was both exciting and intimidating. The office was sleek and modern, with glass walls that reflected the energy of a fast-paced environment. Lydia's position was entry-level, but she had a determination that went beyond her title. She observed everything: how colleagues spoke to one another, the subtle hierarchies, and the unspoken rules that governed the office culture. She quickly learned that talent alone was not enough. Understanding people was equally important. On her second day, she had her first real project meeting. Lydia's nerves buzzed as she walked into the conference room. Sitting at the head of the table was Mr. Ashton, the CEO. He had a reputation for being both brilliant and intimidating, a man whose decisions could make or break careers. His gaze was sharp, and he carried an air of authority that made even senior managers sit up straighter. Lydia felt a flicker of anxiety but pushed it down. She had prepared thoroughly, and she wasn't going to let fear get in the way. The meeting began, and Lydia listened carefully, taking notes and contributing when appropriate. She noticed Mr. Ashton's eyes occasionally drift toward her, but she couldn't tell if it was interest or simply observation. After the meeting, a colleague whispered, "He notices the ones who stand out." Lydia didn't know if she wanted to be noticed yet, but she knew one thing: she had to prove herself. The first few weeks were a blur of learning and adjusting. Lydia stayed late often, not because she had to, but because she wanted to understand the company from the inside out. She studied reports, asked questions, and slowly started to make a name for herself among her peers. People began to see her not just as a new employee, but as someone who brought fresh ideas and a unique perspective. She was careful not to attract too much attention, knowing that in a corporate world, visibility was a double-edged sword. One afternoon, Lydia was called into a meeting with Mr. Ashton alone. Her heart skipped a beat as she walked into his office. He looked up from his desk, a faint smile on his face. "Lydia, I've been reviewing your work on the West Coast project. I'm impressed with your insights. Tell me, how do you approach challenges like these?" Lydia took a deep breath and explained her thought process clearly and confidently. She noticed that he listened intently, nodding occasionally, his eyes reflecting curiosity rather than judgment. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You have a knack for seeing things differently," he said. "Keep that up." It was a small compliment, but it meant more to Lydia than she expected. In a world where she was often overlooked, being acknowledged by someone like Mr. Ashton felt validating. She left the office that day with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to prove that she belonged. Over the next few months, Lydia's responsibilities grew. She started working on more high-profile projects, often collaborating with different departments. Her ability to communicate clearly and think strategically earned her respect from colleagues at all levels. She learned to navigate office politics with subtlety, understanding when to push her ideas and when to step back. It was exhausting at times, but Lydia thrived on the challenge. Despite her professional focus, she couldn't ignore the subtle chemistry that seemed to exist between her and Mr. Ashton. It wasn't overt, but there were moments, a shared glance, a quiet conversation after a meeting, a brief smile that made her pulse quicken. She reminded herself to stay professional. She had worked too hard to jeopardize her career, yet she couldn't deny that there was a spark, an unspoken connection that neither of them addressed openly. One evening, Lydia stayed late to finish a report. The office was quiet, the hum of computers and the distant city sounds the only companions. Mr. Ashton walked past her desk, stopping briefly. "Working late again?" he asked. Lydia looked up, offering a small smile. "Just making sure everything is ready for tomorrow." He nodded, a hint of something unspoken in his expression. "I appreciate your dedication," he said before continuing down the hallway. Lydia's heart raced, but she quickly returned to her work, telling herself it was nothing more than professional acknowledgement. Outside the office, Lydia's life was simpler, but no less challenging. She rented a small apartment in a bustling neighborhood. where she could cook her own meals, read late into the night, and reflect on her goals. She missed her family sometimes, but she reminded herself why she had come: to grow, to learn, and to prove that she could succeed on her own terms. The city, with all its noise and opportunity, became both her classroom and her testing ground. Her weekends were spent exploring the city, discovering hidden cafes, parks, and bookstores. She met people from all walks of life, each encounter teaching her something new about human nature. Lydia loved these moments of anonymity, where she could just be herself without the constraints of titles and expectations. Yet she always returned to the office with a renewed drive, ready to tackle whatever challenge awaited. As months passed, Lydia's influence in the company grew. She became known for her innovative ideas and problem-solving skills. Senior managers sought her input, and her colleagues respected her opinions. She was no longer just the new girl. She was someone whose contributions mattered. Yet through it all, she remained careful, understanding that visibility came with both rewards and risks. Her interactions with Mr. Ashton continued to be professional, but tinged with a subtle familiarity. He began to seek her opinion more often, not just on projects but on strategic decisions and company direction. Lydia realized that he valued her perspective, and this acknowledgement boosted her confidence. She started to see herself not just as an employee, but as a partner in the company's growth, even if unofficially. One rainy afternoon, a major project hit a snag. Lydia was called into an emergency meeting with Mr. Ashton and several department heads. The atmosphere was tense, and Lydia felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She listened carefully, analyzed the situation, and presented a solution that was both practical and innovative. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Mr. Ashton looked at her with a rare smile. "Exactly what we needed," he said. The approval from someone of his stature filled Lydia with a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. By the end of her first year, Lydia had not only proven her professional capabilities, but had also established herself as a trusted advisor to the CEO. She had earned a place in the company that went beyond her official title. Her journey from a newcomer to someone integral to the organization had been challenging, but she thrived on every obstacle and every success. The city, once intimidating and foreign, had become a place where she could grow, learn, and be seen, not just for her work, but for her mind and character. Through it all, Lydia remained grounded. She knew that the road ahead would bring new challenges and complexities, especially as her connection with Mr. Ashton, however subtle, continued to grow. But she was ready. She had arrived not just to work, but to make a mark, and she intended to do so on her own terms. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Lydia felt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Over the months, Lydia's life at the company grew more complex. She had settled into a rhythm, but the line between professional and personal was beginning to blur, though she told herself she would never cross it. Her days were full of meetings, project deadlines, and collaboration with multiple departments. She enjoyed the challenges, but what she didn't expect was how much she would start looking forward to certain moments. Brief conversations with Mr. Ashton, discussions that seemed to go beyond business, moments where they laughed quietly about things no one else understood. One evening, Lydia stayed late finishing a presentation that was due the next morning. She had lost track of time, completely absorbed in the details. As she packed up her laptop, she heard footsteps approaching. Mr. Ashton was standing in the doorway holding a folder. "Still here?" he asked, his tone casual but with a hint of concern. Lydia looked up, offering a small smile. "Just making sure everything is ready." He stepped inside and placed the folder on her desk. "I wanted to go over some points for tomorrow. You've been doing great work. I trust your judgment on this." There was something in the way he spoke, a subtle warmth that wasn't typical of him in public settings. Lydia felt a flutter in her chest but reminded herself it was simply a discussion about work. They went through the presentation together, discussing strategy and potential challenges. Mr. Ashton was focused, but occasionally his eyes lingered on her, as if he were trying to understand more than just her ideas. Lydia noticed, and while she felt a mixture of curiosity and caution, she maintained her professional composure. There was an unspoken connection forming, delicate yet undeniable. As weeks turned into months, Lydia and Mr. Ashton began to work even more closely. They often found themselves in situations where decisions needed to be made quickly, and their collaboration became seamless. They anticipated each other's thoughts, finishing sentences and offering solutions almost simultaneously. It was exhilarating for Lydia to feel so in sync with someone of his caliber. She felt seen, respected, and intellectually challenged in ways she hadn't experienced before. One night, after a particularly long day, they were the last two in the office. The city outside the window sparkled with lights, and the hum of the building was a quiet companion. Mr. Ashton leaned back in his chair, letting out a deep sigh. "Sometimes it feels like no one else understands the pressure this job brings," he admitted quietly. Lydia looked up, surprised by his openness. She had seen him confident and composed in meetings, but this vulnerability was rare. "It's a lot to manage," she said softly. "But you're good at it. You handle more than most could." She realized she wasn't just talking about work. There was a human element in her words, a recognition of the person behind the title. He nodded, a small, thoughtful smile forming. "I appreciate that. Most people see the office, the decisions, the numbers. Very few notice the weight behind them." There was a pause, and then he added almost to himself, "Except you." Lydia's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to focus on the discussion at hand. They continued working, but the atmosphere had shifted. There was a new layer to their interactions, an unspoken understanding that their connection went beyond the usual professional boundaries. Over time, their conversations became more personal. They discussed books they were reading, movies they had seen, and stories from their pasts. Lydia shared memories of her childhood, the challenges she had faced, and her dreams for the future. Mr. Ashton, in turn, spoke of the pressures of leading a company, the loneliness that often accompanied success, and the rare moments of genuine joy that few got to see. Each exchange built trust and closeness, and Lydia realized she was forming an emotional bond with him, one that was both thrilling and complicated. Despite the growing connection, Lydia remained cautious. She knew the risks of crossing professional boundaries and how easily things could spiral out of control. She valued her career and wanted her accomplishments to be recognized on their own merit. Yet she couldn't deny the magnetic pull she felt toward Mr. Ashton, a pull that was both exciting and dangerous. One afternoon, they were reviewing a critical report when Mr. Ashton reached across the table to adjust a chart on her laptop. Their hands brushed, and for a moment Lydia felt a jolt of electricity. She looked up at him, and he met her gaze with a steady intensity. Neither spoke, but the moment lingered, charged with something unspoken. Lydia quickly pulled her hand back, focusing on the work in front of her, but she could feel the shift in the air. As the weeks went on, these subtle moments became more frequent. Brief touches on the arm, shared laughter over inside jokes, lingering glances that held more than casual interest. Both were aware of the growing tension, yet neither addressed it openly. The secret connection they shared was delicate, unspoken, and thrilling. It added a layer of excitement to their work, but it also demanded caution and self-control. Outside the office, Lydia's life continued with its familiar rhythm. She explored the city, maintained friendships, and kept her personal life separate from the growing complexity at work. Yet she found herself thinking about Mr. Ashton more than she expected. There was a part of her that was drawn to him, not just to the power he held, but to the person she was discovering behind the title. He was intelligent, complex, and beneath the surface, surprisingly vulnerable. She was fascinated by him, and the feeling was mutual. One evening during a company event, they found themselves standing together on a balcony, away from the crowd. The city lights stretched out below them, and for a moment the noise of the party felt distant. They talked quietly about their careers, their ambitions, and the sacrifices they had made to reach this point. Lydia noticed the genuine interest in his eyes, the way he listened intently, as if every word mattered. Their conversation drifted to personal dreams and regrets. Mr. Ashton shared a rare story about his early days in the business, the mistakes he had made and the lessons he had learned. Lydia listened, captivated not just by the story but by the honesty and openness he displayed. She realized that these conversations were forming a bond that went beyond mere attraction. It was a connection built on understanding, trust, and shared ambition. As the months passed, their relationship deepened in subtle ways. They began spending time together outside the office under the guise of business dinners, brainstorming sessions, or company events. In these moments, they were free to explore the connection without the constraints of the office, yet they remained careful, aware of the boundaries that had to be maintained. Lydia found herself laughing more, thinking more deeply, and feeling more alive. The secret bond they shared became a source of excitement and emotional support. Despite the growing intimacy, Lydia never lost sight of her goals. She continued to excel in her work, ensuring that her achievements were recognized independently of her relationship with Mr. Ashton. Her colleagues respected her for her skills and dedication, unaware of the private connection that had developed behind closed doors. This balance of professional success and personal excitement became the rhythm of her life, challenging but deeply fulfilling. One night, after finishing a major project, they were alone in the office again. The city was quiet and the hum of the air conditioning filled the space. Mr. Ashton looked at her and said softly, "I don't often say this, but I value having someone who understands more than just the work. Someone I can trust to see the person behind the title." Lydia felt a warmth in her chest, a recognition that the bond they had formed was unique and meaningful. She nodded, understanding the weight of his words, but kept her response professional. "I respect that," she said, "and I appreciate the trust." In the privacy of the office, they shared a moment of quiet understanding. It was not a declaration of romance, but it was the beginning of a deeper connection, one built on trust, respect, and unspoken attraction. Lydia realized that while the line between professional and personal was becoming blurred, the foundation of their relationship was strong and mutually valued. By the end of this period, Lydia had firmly established herself as an indispensable part of the company. Her collaboration with Mr. Ashton had grown into a powerful partnership, marked by mutual respect and a subtle, undeniable personal connection. She felt seen in a way she hadn't experienced before, both for her skills and for who she was as a person. The thrill of this secret bond added a layer of intensity to her life, making her workdays exciting and emotionally charged. Lydia knew that the future held uncertainties. The connection they shared was delicate and could be easily disrupted if boundaries were crossed recklessly. Yet she also recognized that this bond, built on understanding, trust, and shared ambition, was something rare and valuable. It was a connection that would shape not only her professional journey, but also her personal growth, challenging her to navigate the complexities of ambition, attraction, and self-respect. She was ready for whatever came next, aware that the path ahead would be filled with both excitement and challenges, and determined to move forward with clarity and purpose. As time passed, Lydia found herself living two intertwined lives. On the surface, she was the dedicated, ambitious professional everyone in the office respected. Behind closed doors, however, she shared a secret connection with Mr. Ashton that few could even imagine. It was a delicate balance, requiring her to navigate each day carefully while keeping her emotions and desires in check. The early excitement of their secret bond had evolved into something more complex. They were partners in work, confidants in personal matters, and quietly companions in a shared emotional space. Lydia often found herself thinking about him when she wasn't at work, wondering how someone so powerful could feel so vulnerable, and how someone like her could inspire that trust and openness. Every morning, she walked into the office with the same determination that had carried her this far. She knew her worth, and she refused to let her private relationship overshadow her professional achievements. Her reputation as a problem solver and innovative thinker continued to grow. Colleagues sought her advice, managers relied on her insights, and her influence within the company expanded quietly but steadily. At the same time, her interactions with Mr. Ashton became more nuanced. Small gestures, an encouraging word, a shared joke, a moment of eye contact carried more weight than anything else. Their shared understanding allowed them to communicate almost effortlessly, anticipating each other's thoughts and responses. In the midst of hectic schedules and high-pressure projects, these moments were grounding and reassuring for both of them. One afternoon, a major project required urgent attention. The team was under pressure and tensions were high. Lydia and Mr. Ashton were working late, analyzing data and reviewing strategy. The office was quiet, the hum of computers the only sound. Lydia noticed the subtle fatigue in his posture, the way he rubbed his temple as he studied the numbers. "You've been working hard?" she said gently, keeping her tone professional but caring. He looked at her, a faint smile appearing. "I suppose I have. But it's worth it when I know you're here to make sense of it all." Her heart skipped a beat at his words, but she focused on the task at hand. Together, they navigated the challenges, finding solutions that satisfied the needs of the company and impressed the team. The sense of accomplishment was heightened by their shared effort and mutual understanding. It was a partnership that thrived in both crisis and calm, and it strengthened the bond between them. Outside the office, Lydia continued to live a life of independence. She maintained her apartment, explored the city, and nurtured friendships that grounded her. Yet there were moments when the secrecy weighed heavily. She often questioned whether the relationship could remain hidden, whether the balance between professional respect and personal connection could last without causing complications. Despite these concerns, she also found comfort in the private world they shared. Mr. Ashton trusted her in ways few people ever had. They spoke openly about frustrations, aspirations, and fears, creating a space where vulnerability was not only accepted but valued. Lydia realized that this level of trust was rare, and she treasured it even as it complicated her emotions. Their secret relationship was not without challenges. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and the constant awareness of what would happen if anyone discovered their bond. Lydia became adept at managing appearances, ensuring that their interactions in public remained professional and that their private connection remained hidden. It was a delicate dance requiring vigilance and emotional intelligence. One evening, during a particularly intense project deadline, they found themselves alone in the office again. The city lights sparkled through the windows, casting a warm glow over the space. Mr. Ashton leaned back in his chair, exhaustion visible on his face. "I don't know what I would do without your guidance," he said quietly. "You've become indispensable." Lydia felt a mix of pride and apprehension. She appreciated the acknowledgement but reminded herself that her value was not tied to their personal connection. "I'm glad I can help," she replied, keeping her voice steady. The night stretched on and they worked in a comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with deep mutual understanding. Occasionally their hands would brush as they reached for documents or tools, sending small jolts of awareness through both of them. They had learned to manage these moments, acknowledging the connection without letting it dominate their focus. As months turned into a year, Lydia's role in the company became more prominent. She led initiatives, mentored junior employees, and developed strategies that significantly impacted the company's success. Her achievements were recognized independently of her private connection with Mr. Ashton, which was crucial to her sense of self-worth and professional integrity. Yet, the emotional tension of their secret bond continued to grow. They had shared so much of themselves that the line between professional and personal was increasingly blurred. Lydia found herself reflecting on her feelings, the excitement and the challenges of navigating a relationship built on secrecy. She was aware that the balance was fragile, but she also recognized the depth of their connection, which was built on trust, respect, and genuine understanding. Social events became opportunities for subtle connection. They would exchange knowing glances across crowded rooms, share brief conversations away from the group, or find quiet moments to discuss strategy in a relaxed setting. Each interaction reinforced their bond, creating a private world within the larger public environment. Lydia cherished these moments even as she remained conscious of the risks. One weekend, Lydia took some time for herself, exploring the city and reflecting on her journey. She thought about how far she had come, the challenges she had overcome, and the person she was becoming. Her relationship with Mr. Ashton was part of that growth, but it was not the entirety of her identity. She was building a life defined by her choices, achievements, and values. When she returned to the office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She approached her work with clarity, balancing her private connection with Mr. Ashton and her professional responsibilities. She became adept at managing both worlds, ensuring that neither compromised the other. The skill and emotional intelligence required to maintain this balance were challenging, but Lydia found it rewarding. As the second year of her tenure approached, Lydia began to consider her long-term goals. She realized that while her connection with Mr. Ashton was meaningful and fulfilling, her personal and professional growth required independence. She wanted her accomplishments to be recognized on their own merit, not shadowed by their secret bond. This realization sparked a quiet determination within her, a resolve to plan her next steps carefully. Despite the underlying tension, Lydia and Mr. Ashton continued to collaborate effectively. Their work was characterized by a unique synergy, a combination of trust, mutual respect, and shared ambition. They had become indispensable to each other, not only for their professional contributions but also for the emotional support they provided. The office thrived under their combined efforts, though few were aware of the personal layer underpinning their partnership. Lydia's days were filled with the usual corporate challenges, but the private connection with Mr. Ashton added a layer of intensity and excitement. She navigated meetings, deadlines, and strategic decisions with confidence, all while maintaining the delicate secrecy of their bond. Each day was a test of skill, judgment, and emotional resilience, and Lydia embraced it fully. As part 3 of her journey closed, Lydia found herself reflecting on the complexity of her situation. She had achieved remarkable professional success while maintaining a deeply personal connection with someone as influential as Mr. Ashton. The experience had taught her valuable lessons about trust, discretion, and the power of subtle influence. She understood that the road ahead would continue to be challenging, requiring careful navigation of both personal and professional realms, but she was prepared to face it with intelligence, grace, and unwavering determination. As Lydia approached the second year at the company, she began to reflect on how much she had grown. She had become a trusted advisor to Mr. Ashton, someone whose insights were valued at every level of the organization. Yet beneath the surface of professional achievement, a quiet voice within her began to speak louder, the voice reminding her of her independence, her worth, and the life she wanted to build on her own terms. It started with small realizations. She noticed how often she put her personal desires aside to accommodate the demands of the secret bond she shared with Mr. Ashton. She had invested 2 years of emotional energy into a connection that, while meaningful, existed in the shadows. Her achievements, while recognized professionally, were sometimes subtly associated with her private relationship, and that thought stirred a growing unease within her. One evening, Lydia sat in her apartment, reviewing the upcoming projects and deadlines. The city outside her window glimmered with lights, but she felt a sense of restlessness. She had been thinking about opportunities outside the company, positions where her work could be valued without any hidden context. She knew she had the talent and determination to succeed independently, and the idea of stepping into a space where her identity and contributions were fully recognized sparked both excitement and apprehension. The next day at the office, Lydia approached her work with renewed focus. She led meetings, strategized with colleagues, and tackled complex projects with her usual skill and precision. But her mind lingered on the thought of her own path, a path where she could define success on her own terms. She realized that her connection with Mr. Ashton, while deeply significant, was only a part of her life, not the whole. Meanwhile, her interactions with Mr. Ashton continued, though they were tinged with a subtle shift. He noticed her increased confidence and independence, but did not yet understand the internal dialogue that had begun to take shape within her. He continued to rely on her professionally, seeking her advice and valuing her judgment. Their bond remained strong, but Lydia sensed that the foundation of secrecy could no longer be the guiding force in her life. One afternoon, Lydia was called into a private meeting with Mr. Ashton to discuss a critical initiative. As she entered his office, she noticed the usual intensity in his gaze, the careful attention he gave to every detail. "Lydia, your work on the new project has been outstanding," he said. "I don't know what I would do without your perspective." She acknowledged the compliment with a professional nod, feeling a mixture of pride and a quiet resolve. "Thank you. I'm glad I could contribute," she replied. Yet beneath her composed exterior, a decision was forming, a decision that would change the course of both their lives. Over the following weeks, Lydia began to plan meticulously. She reviewed potential opportunities, updated her portfolio, and quietly networked with contacts outside the company. She wanted to ensure that her departure would be smooth, professional, and without unnecessary disruption. At the same time, she remained fully engaged with her responsibilities, maintaining the high standard of excellence she had established. The tension of secrecy had always been part of their relationship, but now it took on a new dimension. Lydia found herself measuring every interaction, balancing the desire to maintain closeness with the awareness that her ultimate decision would redefine their bond. Mr. Ashton, unaware of the internal shift, continued to confide in her, share ideas, and rely on her insights. Lydia listened, contributed, and supported him, all while planning her next steps with careful precision. In quiet moments, Lydia reflected on the emotional journey she had experienced. She cherished the trust and connection she shared with Mr. Ashton, but she also recognized the importance of self-respect and personal growth. She understood that leaving would not diminish the significance of their bond, but it would allow her to step into a space where her abilities and identity could be recognized independently. One evening, after finishing a major presentation, Lydia and Mr. Ashton found themselves alone in the office. The city lights reflected in the windows, casting a warm glow over the space. "Lydia, I don't know how I would manage without your support," he said quietly, his tone sincere. "You've become an essential part of my life, both professionally and personally." Lydia met his gaze, feeling the weight of the moment. She wanted to acknowledge the depth of their connection without revealing her decision prematurely. "I appreciate your trust," she said, her voice steady. "It means a lot to me." They continued to discuss work, but the unspoken understanding between them was palpable. Lydia knew that the time was approaching when she would need to make her intentions clear, and she prepared herself for the conversation with care and thoughtfulness. As the weeks passed, Lydia took deliberate steps to ensure her departure would be seamless. She documented her projects, trained colleagues to take over responsibilities, and organized her work in a way that would leave a positive legacy. She approached each task with professionalism, determined to leave behind a record of competence and integrity. At the same time, she reflected on her emotional journey. The bond she shared with Mr. Ashton had been profound, teaching her about trust, vulnerability, and the complexities of human connection. She valued the lessons learned, the moments of laughter and support, and the understanding that had developed between them. Yet she also recognized that her future required independence and self-recognition. One afternoon, she received an offer from another company, a position that would allow her to lead projects, shape strategy, and have her contributions recognized without any hidden context. She felt a surge of excitement and clarity. This was the opportunity she had been quietly preparing for, the path that would allow her to step into her full potential. Lydia knew that the decision to leave would not be easy. It meant redefining her relationship with Mr. Ashton, facing the uncertainty of a new environment and stepping into the unknown. Yet she also understood that staying in a position defined by secrecy would limit her growth and prevent her from fully embracing her own worth. In the days leading up to her departure, Lydia approached her work with focus and care. She completed projects, mentored colleagues, and ensured that every responsibility was handed over smoothly. Her professionalism and dedication left a lasting impression, reinforcing the respect she had earned over 2 years. Finally, the day arrived when she prepared to leave the company. She packed her belongings, organized her files, and took a moment to reflect on her journey. The office had been a place of growth, challenge, and unexpected connection. She had built a career, formed a bond with someone influential, and learned valuable lessons about herself and the world around her. Lydia approached Mr. Ashton's office to say goodbye. She knocked lightly, and he looked up, surprised but smiling. "Lydia, what brings you here?" he asked. She took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of gratitude and resolve. "I wanted to thank you for the opportunity, your guidance, and the trust you've placed in me. It's been an incredible journey, and I've learned so much, but it's time for me to move forward and explore new challenges." He studied her for a moment, realizing the gravity of her words. "I see," he said quietly. There was a pause, a silence filled with unspoken understanding. "You've always been remarkable, Lydia. I never fully realized how much until now. I respect your decision, and I wish you nothing but success." Lydia nodded, feeling a sense of closure and affirmation. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." She left the office with a mixture of emotions: pride in her accomplishments, gratitude for the experiences shared, and excitement for the future. As she walked out of the building, Lydia felt the weight of the past 2 years and the lightness of new beginnings. She had honored her journey, respected her connection with Mr. Ashton, and chosen a path that allowed her to embrace her own worth fully. The city outside seemed brighter, filled with possibilities she was ready to explore, confident in the knowledge that she had the skills, resilience, and integrity to succeed on her own terms. The morning of her departure, Lydia woke early, feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm. Her apartment was quiet, filled with sunlight streaming through the windows. She went about her routine deliberately, savoring the small moments before leaving a chapter of her life behind. Each action felt intentional, a quiet acknowledgement of how far she had come. She arrived at the office earlier than usual, the building buzzing with the usual energy of employees starting their day. Lydia moved through the familiar corridors, taking in the sights and sounds, remembering the countless hours she had spent here. Her steps were steady, her mind focused, but her heart carried the weight of farewell. She had invested 2 years into this place, and now she was leaving not out of necessity but out of choice, which made it feel even more profound. Her first task was to finalize a few projects and ensure a smooth handover. She reviewed reports, double-checked presentations, and left detailed notes for her colleagues. Every detail mattered. Lydia wanted to leave behind not just her work, but a legacy of competence and professionalism. As she moved from desk to desk, offering guidance and answering questions, she noticed the respect and trust in the eyes of those around her. It was a quiet affirmation of her impact. By mid-morning, it was time to see Mr. Ashton one last time. She paused outside his office door, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Knocking lightly, she entered and found him immersed in paperwork, yet he looked up immediately and smiled, a mixture of curiosity and warmth in his expression. "Lydia, is everything ready for your departure?" he asked, the tone gentle but hinting at unspoken understanding. She nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, I've made sure all projects are organized and responsibilities handed over. I wanted to thank you personally for your guidance and trust over the past 2 years." Mr. Ashton leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "You've grown remarkably," he said softly. "I never realized fully how much until now. I'm going to miss your insight and dedication." Lydia felt a wave of emotion but kept her composure. "Thank you. It means a lot to hear that. I've learned so much here, and I'm grateful for the opportunities and the trust you've placed in me. But I feel ready to take the next step, to grow in a new environment and continue building my career independently." He nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I understand. You've always been ambitious, and I admire that. I wish you nothing but success in your future endeavors." There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken emotions, memories of late nights, shared insights, and moments of quiet connection. Lydia recognized that while their relationship had been significant, it had also taught her the importance of self-reliance, integrity, and pursuing her own path. She had grown emotionally and professionally, and this departure was the natural next step. With a final nod, she turned to leave, feeling a sense of closure. As she walked down the hallway, colleagues greeted her with warm smiles and well wishes. Some had known she was leaving, while others had only learned recently. The appreciation in their voices and expressions reinforced the impact she had made, not just as Mr. Ashton's confidant, but as an individual whose work and character were valued. Outside the building, Lydia paused to take in the city around her. The streets were alive with movement, the air crisp and full of possibility. She felt a sense of liberation, the culmination of careful planning, courage, and self-respect. She had stepped into a position where her achievements would be recognized independently, where her growth and contributions would not be overshadowed by secrecy or hidden connections. Her next steps involved starting her new position at a company that valued her insights and expertise. The transition was smooth, facilitated by the careful planning she had undertaken in the weeks leading up to her departure. She quickly adapted to the new environment, meeting colleagues, understanding the organizational culture, and contributing immediately to projects. Lydia felt invigorated, her mind sharp, her confidence high, and her sense of purpose clear. At the same time, she reflected on the bond she had left behind. The experiences with Mr. Ashton had shaped her, teaching her about trust, vulnerability, and the complexity of human relationships. She appreciated the lessons learned and the moments of connection, but she also understood that growth sometimes required moving forward, embracing change, and seeking recognition and fulfillment on her own terms. Over the following months, Lydia flourished in her new role. Her ideas were implemented, her strategies recognized, and her influence expanded. She developed professional relationships built on respect and collaboration, and she found a renewed sense of identity and accomplishment. The challenges she faced were different, but her skills, experience, and determination allowed her to navigate them successfully. Occasionally, she reflected on her time with Mr. Ashton, recognizing that their shared history had been both a challenge and a gift. The secret connection had taught her about subtlety, emotional intelligence, and the importance of maintaining boundaries. It had shown her the value of self-respect and the courage to pursue her own path. These reflections were bittersweet but empowering, reinforcing her commitment to her own growth. Lydia's journey also reinforced the idea that meaningful connections do not need to define one's entire life. She had built a bond with someone influential, learned from the experience, and carried forward the lessons without being limited by the past. Her growth was self-directed, her achievements independent, and her sense of identity intact. In her personal life, Lydia continued to explore the city, form friendships, and engage in activities that brought her joy and fulfillment. She balanced her professional responsibilities with personal growth, creating a life that was rich, rewarding, and reflective of her values and ambitions. Each day reinforced her sense of agency and her ability to shape her own future. Reflecting on the journey, Lydia recognized the transformation she had undergone. She had arrived as an ambitious newcomer, navigated complex professional and emotional landscapes, and emerged as a confident, independent, and accomplished individual. Her departure from the company and from the private bond with Mr. Ashton marked the culmination of a chapter that had been formative, challenging, and ultimately empowering. She understood that success was not just measured by achievements or recognition, but also by the courage to make decisions aligned with one's values and aspirations. Lydia had chosen to honor her growth, embrace new opportunities, and step into a life defined by her own merits and decisions. As she moved forward, Lydia carried with her the knowledge that she was capable, resilient, and worthy of recognition on her own terms. The experiences she had gained, the lessons she had learned, and the bonds she had formed had all contributed to her journey. But they did not define her. She was the architect of her own future, ready to face new challenges and seize new opportunities with confidence, clarity, and grace.